Welcome. Today I'm going to show you how to make another Notan exercise. And the first thing that you need to do is decorate one sheet of paper with either black paint, black pastels, charcoal, something to make it deep and rich and dark. It can have texture on it, and you can make it solid black, or you can make it have different gradations of very dark grays and black. And then you want to cut out a square, and the square can be whatever size you want to work with. You're going to use a second sheet of drawing paper, and you also want that one to be a square. So I'm going to show you how to measure a sheet of paper to create a square. Okay, so the first thing that you can do is fold it in half, or if you don't want to fold it in half, if you want a larger square, then just leave it like this. The second thing that you do is you fold it at a diagonal so that and this is a right triangle, okay, which means that one of the angles is a 90-degree angle. Okay, so you want one side of the paper to line up with the edge of what you're going to be working on. Okay, and then if you're going to make smaller squares, then you fold it on that fold and cut. Okay, and then you can just keep this for something else. It can be a little book, a card, or you can use it in collage. Okay, and then we'll cut these two in half. So in this way you have two squares. Okay, and you can do this with your plain paper for the background, or you can do this for the decorated paper, like this one. Okay, so you can see that this is a little bit bigger. The background is a little bit bigger than the square itself. You might only need one that is slightly smaller, a square that's slightly smaller than the background. If you need one that's a little bit larger, then just use the whole sheet. Make another right triangle, fold it over like so, and then trim once again the excess off. And then you'll have your white square that's larger. Okay, and you might want one that's a little bit bigger in comparison to the square than the smaller one. I'll show you two examples, one with a smaller background and one with a larger one. Okay, so this one you can see has a lot more room to work. And this particular exercise is deconstructing a square. Okay, so we're not going to have just a square here. We're going to have a square that has been cut apart and shared with the rest of the background to create a feeling of Notan and the balance of light and dark. Okay, so the next step, you'll want to have your square, and if you've cut it out using a fold, you can fold it back. Sometimes it makes it a little bit easier to cut. Kind of symmetrical type of cuts, but you can also just cut it like this. You'll also want either a glue stick or just some plain white glue and a brush to apply that. So first I'll show you how to kind of start deconstructing it using the fold, and you can either have a diagonal fold for this, or you can also use a rectangular or square fold, where I'll show you in a second. Okay, so that cuts on even on both sides. Okay, and then you're going to be gluing these. Whoops, I've got them on the wrong. Going to be gluing these in a mirrored image like so. Okay, If you want to cut them diagonally the other way, you can do that. You can also fold your paper like this and have symmetrical cuts on another side. And now this is alright, but it's a little bit simple. Okay, so we might want to do a little bit more by cutting each of these. Now we don't have to do the same thing on the other side. We could obviously do the same thing, but we don't have to. So I'm just going to show you a different thing to do. Now this whole area is kind of just there. It hasn't actually filtered out and done anything additional. Neither has this. So I'm going to... Okay, now on the cuts that you make that are not symmetrical, and so you can't switch them around, you can turn it so that it's not exactly the same, but it's more of like a mirror image. Okay, like so. Now we don't have anything going on down here, so it's almost like a tree, which is okay, but something a little different. And I actually need to move this. We want to kind of center this. Now this one actually should go here, but yeah, I think it actually looks better a little bit closer, like so. And this one I'm going to break up a little bit. Okay, now in the areas that are symmetrical, like this one, where it's kind of pulled out and flipped, we want to line up the edges very precisely, okay, like so. In the areas that are, you know, kind of spreading out and not, they're not symmetrical, they're kind of like flowing out, those don't have to line up exactly, of course. And what we're going to do now is glue down the main object. Okay. And if you have a glue stick, you can just rub that on the back. If you're using white glue with a brush, you can put it on a plastic plate or paper plate that you can reuse as a paint palette. If you're doing this on your kitchen table or something like that, put down a piece of scrap paper, and you can reuse that scrap paper for other art projects. So but that will just keep your glue from getting on your table. You don't have to worry about lining it up with any of the other pieces, just situate it kind of toward the center of your design. And then for each of these little pieces, going to do the same thing. And this is where you need to line it up. If you didn't get enough glue on the edge, just go back, pull it up just a little bit, add the glue, and press it back down. You want to put the glue on thinly, but not so thin that it dries before you have a chance to actually resituate it, so the corners are as precise as you can make them. Okay, and continue working in this way. Okay, so this is our deconstructed square. As you can see that the feeling of a square is still kind of there, but it also feels like other shapes. And I guess the main thing to learn from this design and this process is not just how to deconstruct a square, but it's to gain sensitivity in noticing the interrelationships between the background and the foreground, okay? So that when we're looking at the interior of the square, our eye kind of moves back and forth between noticing the white shapes and then going back and noticing the black shapes. So it helps to develop your sensitivity as an artist in creating interesting backgrounds so that you don't just have a shape floating out in the middle of nowhere, and it might be a beautiful drawing, a beautiful shape or form, but if it doesn't interact with the background in any way, then it's just kind of a dead feeling design. Whereas if you can somehow create that interaction between the background and the figure itself, you have achieved more energy and more visual interest and a more successful design. So that's our deconstruction of a square. Now I'm going to show you how to do more of like a square kind of coming together. And for that we're going to use our smaller sheet. We're going to approach it in the very same way, but we're not going to create cuts that are as deep or that are as dramatic.